Good afternoon, or I guess good morning here. Changing it up today. Have my Dunkin' coffee instead of the usual McCafe. Josh, how's it going?
Nope,
Have any
pretty
coffee
good.
so far?
I've tried a new coffee place today because I had to go out of my way and attempt to pick something up. My spouse is one of those who go on Facebook Marketplace, find some cool things, and then say, "Hey, I need you to pick this up." And we have a minivan since we have three kids, and our minivan is sweet. And every time this has happened, I've literally been like, "There's no way this is fitting in the van," and I've been wrong like 10 times. But this, I was like, I told my wife, I'm like, "You've met your match. There's no way that this like chair thing is fitting." And she's like, "Oh, you've been wrong before." And I'm like, "I'm pretty sure this is the one." So I finally got a win column. I mean, is it a win? But it didn't fit. So I had to go all the way across town. But the bonus is I got to try a new coffee place I haven't tried before. It's pretty good. So um, it's been a morning, but got new coffee and now I'm here, and I don't have a chair.
So here's the question though. What did you order? Was it coffee? Was it cappuccino? Was it some kind of Starbucks thing that's like a pile of sugar that might have some coffee in there somewhere?
Oh no, I order like my soul, just black. That's it. It's black coffee. I'm very much a bougie bean person, but don't add anything to it. Like just a good roasted bean. And it was, I mean, it was okay. You know, it's not like a local craft place, but I think it's a chain Zaxby's, something like that. I don't remember at this point, but it was all right. My wife got a like buttered pecan thing, and it tasted pretty good. But I mean, there's milk in it, and I don't like milky coffee drinks.
Man, and here I am drinking like gas station coffee, basically. It's fine by
Hey,
me.
it works. Sometimes it gets the job done.
Is it
I don't know about like,
caffeinated, right?
yeah. Some of the gas stations by me, they roast the beans like fresh. There's like you can see the beans above it, and they just grind them as you order it. So, I've had some good gas station coffee.
Me too. I was just telling someone like my things are very different for me now than when I was in the field all day, right? So when I was doing MSP work, I spent a couple years basically at clients all day, every day, basically on the road. And back then it was whatever you could get your hands on, whatever was near a client is what you would do for lunch, what you would do for coffee. Um, those days are gone. It's a pretty rare event for me to have to travel to anyone these days except for industry events. And even my last couple of years doing MSP work, I was doing mostly internal things. It's a very different life. But every now and then, I miss being a field tech because I used to go around town and say, "Oh yeah, they were clients. Oh yeah, we need someone for like the insurance agent. Hey, I had a client that did that, right?" You get to know all these weird companies.
Yep.
It was a lot of fun. All right. I guess we should cover some stories unless anyone wants to hear me talk about old client stories. We'll make that a special one day. And you probably have just as many, Josh.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that was my favorite part about. Again, I think we talked about on the last show is I would just go on site just to BS with people and get to meet them and hang out and network. Dean might have yelled at me a little bit for spending too much time in the field, but you know what? I was building relationships. All right, Dean. So you can
You
get
had like the 4 hour time entry for, installing a printer.
yeah, because 3 hours of that was continuing that relationship. That client could have had anybody come in front to fix the printer, but they can't just get anyone that comes in and cares about what their kids are doing and what they have to look forward to, right? Um, but all right, well,
Yeah.
let's go ahead and get to this first thing here, because Dean's gonna fire me 10 minutes into the show.
Client mandates. So see a lot of comments here in the real world from MSPs that are delivering ultimatums to clients on what network gear. Oh, this isn't the direction I thought this was going. Network gear. So basically, I think this is coming down to how harsh are you on enforcing your standards across clients? And this example is hardware. So we'll put aside the configuration security thing for a second because I know that's where my head first went. Like, what are your non-starters on that. But let's talk about just architecture, right? And I think we've all seen examples of this. If one client has a Cisco and you're a SonicWall or a Meraki shop, or if one
Mhm.
client has, a different NAS, or, you usually sell HP servers and these guys have Dell, like how far do you take that? And to what degree do you make them replace stuff? And to what degree do you say, well, we'll give it best effort support? Or do you even say in some cases, we'll give this full support as if it was something you bought from us? So how do you make that decision, and even where do you draw the line on that?
Yeah. So I've always been like, we have our we have our standard, we have our stack, right? I know this is another one that our friend Dean covered. Try to be like the Burger King or whatever fast food restaurant. You go in there, like they have their stack, right? Like we have our networking device that we standardize on, but that doesn't mean we can't support others, right? Like if you come in and you just bought whatever firewall, FortiGate, SonicWall things 3 months ago, like there's no way that you would just come in and say, well, you just bought that, but too bad we don't support it. You have to take ours, right? When it comes time for renewal, then absolutely we're going to quote what we use because it's part of our stack. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad one by any means. So I'm not just gonna rip and replace. We'll figure it out. We'll kind of adapt to what it is. And then of course you have some partners who they prefer this brand or whatever, and we'll do our best to support it. But then you at that point have a shared responsibility matrix. If you're not getting it from us, we can't help take care of the warranty, et cetera. There's only so much we can do versus getting it from us. It's part of our partner network. But as far as not just talking specifically the networking side of things too, I think again, when you first onboard them, you're doing like a discovery and you're looking to see what is in their network and things like that. And there has to be a good partnership with that. Meaning if their operational maturity doesn't match your MSP's operational maturity, there's going to be a mismatch, right? There's going to be a certain level that they have to be at in order for them to be a good client or a good partner. If there's a complete mess, then hey, it's we can, here's some projects, here's our recommendations, we can get you to that point. But if there's some hesitation or they don't want to get to that point, then at that point it's just not a good partnership. So the of course the answer is it depends, right? That's the answer.
I know it's our default. I think I have a slightly different opinion on this. So for us, anything that was included in part of the supportability guarantees, or was part of the service, had to get ripped out. So all of our agreements and all of the clients that we took on included a managed firewall component, right? And so if you're getting that as part of the service, um, that's not going to be on your ASA or your Palo or whatever, right? We were a SonicWall shop at the time, so it was going to be on the SonicWall that our entire team knew how to support. Now, yes, many of us were networking guys and could support an ASA or whatever, right? It's all just networking, right? And these small environments don't have much going on except a couple of NAT rules, most likely. And any of us could have figured that out. But our ability to manage something and truly manage it meant that it needed to be on the same platform, same kind of anything. And that went pretty far down the stack for us. Perfect example, and the way that I like to illustrate this is, let's say that you have a particular EDR vendor, right? You include as part of your service. It doesn't matter if you just bought a license for Symantec. Well, I'm really dating myself. I hope nobody's using that anymore. It doesn't matter if you bought a license for an annual renewal for Symantec yesterday. As part of the service, you get the EDR we're using, and that's it, right? Um, for things that weren't included in the service, I would take the same approach you would for many things, like switches and printers and things like that, right? When renewal time came around, we quote the real one, we quote our preferred one. We would not rip out like that level of things, but certainly firewalls, backup appliances, tooling, absolutely. Just because my team needed to support it, and what I didn't want to do is deploy my more senior engineers to go troubleshoot like some weird thing, and the weird thing just being an interface difference, right, or a
Yep.
manufacturer paradigm difference. So that was it for us. I think we were a little bit harsher. I did know locally we had some competitors that went even further than that, where they would rip out all of the network gear, all of almost everything but the workstations to get them on their standard. They were successful businesses, so I can't really say that that was wrong. It's just not the way we approached it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's going back to the food analogy because that's just what I default to. You typically when you're hired to be an MSP, like you're hired to like, hey, provide me cake, right? And as the cake baker, like I have my own ingredients that I'm going to use, and I'm going to be able to make that cake much faster and much more efficiently because I know what goes into it. But now, if I have a customer who says, "Hey, make me a cake," but like you need to use this is the eggs that I use, this is the toppings I use, that's going to cause my delivery of said cake to be take longer or be not as efficient, or maybe not turn out the same. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to have a standard for sure, but just because there's those little wrinkles. I mean, I don't think you should throw away the whole the whole cake just because they want to use lemons instead of strawberries on top, right? Like you could still support it, but then there's having that difference. We have a couple clients who don't use our EDR even though that it's covered in the stack, and that's all right, but the means that I can't get those alerts and I can't action them. And again, you set those expectations. You have that shared responsibility matrix. Says, hey, I will help you the best I can, but just understand that those alerts aren't coming into our system. They're not coming into my SIEM, so I'm not able to get to them as quickly as I would had they be part of our stack. But we're still going to be able to support you and lead you along the way.
So are you setting supportability expectations when you do that? I guess if I'm the client, what's the benefit? Is it a cost thing for me in that I don't have to pay the licensing for the EDR you would normally use? Or is it um, just a sunk cost fallacy in some cases where you include it in the service anyway and they
Yeah,
want
it's
to
I
use theirs
mean,
for some weird reason?
yeah, I mean that's kind of it. Like if you want my honest answer, there really isn't a benefit. It's just I guess if that's what they want to go with, and they want to continue using it, but I mean it's included, so they should use it. But I'm whatever various reasons, maybe they've had a um, good experience with it so far, or it's just something that they like using, or if they're in a co-managed situation, like hey, it's what they're familiar with and they want to play a bigger part of it. We have
That's a good point.
other
Co-manage would
great,
be a
yeah,
different
we have other
ballgame.
great relationships and other things that we can provide on top of it, so it's not going to be a sticking point, um, unless it's I don't want to say inferior product, but if it's not living up to the expectations that are required. If it was something like a like a Kaspersky, I'll throw that out there. I will argue, day in and day out, and like, hey, we can't use that. Like, it's not beneficial to the business to use something like that because it's illegal now, isn't it? Or not allowed to sell. I don't know if it's illegal, but
Here, let me
um,
put on my diplomatic hat and say, unless the product that the customer is proposing is not capable of delivering the customer expectations.
there you go. There you go. So, all right. Well, we've covered that one with our
I do wait. I
patented
do have
answer.
one more thing
Okay,
on
go.
this quickly. Um, this applies to, I think, what we're describing as architecture standards. I think configuration standards is a different thing, and the classic example is there is no leeway at all on do you want MFA,
Yep.
right? Like that's not even an option. If you say no, like find another provider. Um, do you have other standards like that from security, or do you even have a mechanism if a client says, "Hey, we want to not take your security advice. Here's the waiver to sign," or is that just a total non-negotiable?
So we are very much a partnership type MSP. Like we're not like, I mean, yes, we're contracted, but our whole idea is we're a technology partner. So that includes the the typical MSP, the security side, the architects, things like that. So if we have a client who is declining basic security services such as that, unfortunately, that's not a good partnership at that point. So we'll go through and kind of do a risk assessment and address it and basically state, hey, this is the business risk to your environment. By not having these things in place, you're not compliant with XYZ, regulatory requirements, cyber insurance, et cetera. It poses too big of a risk. This is our proposed roadmap. And we need to get this fixed in X amount of time, or unfortunately, we can't continue our partnership. So depending on the level of risk, there is a line in the sand, because ultimately it's going to come back on us. I mean, it's a disservice to us as a technology partner if they're not putting that in place. I wouldn't say, not, again, the patented answer is always, it depends, right? It would depend on the business risk, but I mean, at some point, if they're not meeting the basic requirements, then it's just not a good fit. It's got to be a two-way street, right? We want them to be a good partner, and we want to be the good partner. And if there's a disconnect there, it's not a good fit, and we'll unfortunately find someone else. I've been at previous MSPs where it literally doesn't matter. Like, if they want to do it, okay, whatever. We're just going to provide our base services and continue billing them and collecting that bill. I'm not a fan of that. Because there's a lot that can go wrong with that. So,
and I only bring this up to illustrate that. Let's make a technical analogy. It's like group policy, right? There's policies and there's preferences, and there are some things that realistically, from a liability and risk standpoint, that you really can't budge on, and there are some things where you might have some flexibility if it's what the client really wants, and that'll be different to your it depends point. For every organization, it just takes some time to figure out where that line is going to be for you.
Yep.
Okay, we've now beat it to death, ultimately.
Our patented answer, it depends. So let's see what we can make of this next story here. When do you call yourself an MSP versus break fix? So looks like this person made a post last week talking about pricing for stacks and all you can eat plans, and hey, there's some disagreement. So he's saying, hey, we use some of the following tools, your typical stack, your RMM, PSA, email stuff, remote access tools, etc. There's also maintenance, but he thinks basically, hey, I have the stack, so am I an MSP or am I still break fix? So he's basically asking where that line is, and when do you call it, and what kind of feedback do you have for him?
Well, so if somebody came up to me and asked this question, I would start with one thing. There is no universally agreed upon definition of MSP. There's no NIST standard that says here's what MSP is. So it's a little arbitrary. So my opinion on it, though, is as soon as you have recurring agreements that include tools and you are involved in the IT decision-making process for that client, those three elements together is when you're providing something that I would call MSP services. And the reason I say all three is you can very easily have recurring agreement, even provide tools. But if you're just like, maybe a vendor who has a remote access thing installed to manage a server or something, that's not an MSP. You're not involved in the IT strategy for that company. It's that third piece, that strategic input part, that I think takes you from vendor break fix to MSP. Right? You can be break fix and just have your remote access stuff installed just to make it convenient when somebody calls in, so you don't have to deal with it. Right? You're still not involved. So I guess that's my criteria, but reiterating, there is no universally agreed upon definition. I just made that up like right here, spur of the moment.
Yep. No, I would agree with that. I mean, even there's MSPs that will call themselves MSP, and I would say that one of the previous ones I've at was called an MSP, but looking back on it, it was break fix. We deployed our tools, but we were completely reactionary. There was no proactiveness at all. We have our tools on there, and then we would just, hey, they would call in for tickets. We would fix the tickets. There really wasn't much proactiveness unless you call, hey, your server is out of date. We need to put in a new one. Or, we want wireless. So let's do a wireless project. versus the other ones I've been at where like you said, you have a decision making, right? So we're going to help you with road mapping, with projects, with budgets, where you're not just deploying tools and waiting for tickets, right? You obviously are doing proactive plus reactive. And the whole idea is the more proactive you are, the less reactive you have to be. And therefore you can be more profitable. But, this is the thing with MSPs is we're not regulated by any sort of regulatory body, for better or for worse. I have thoughts on that as well. So you can call yourself whatever the hell you want. It really doesn't matter. But what matters is what you're doing is be profitable and sustainable and works for you. But when it comes down to the pricing, I mean, this person is like, hey, there's no way it can be at this, et cetera, et cetera. The pricing question is, it depends as well. But I see a lot of people, especially on the Reddit, maybe beginners, just throwing a price out there because they've seen, the other people have said this, so I'm just going to do that, not knowing what goes into it. And this is where my general manager restaurant background comes into. You have to figure out your COGS, your cost of goods. So what is your licensing cost? What is your overhead? What is your labor? Like all of that stuff needs to go into figuring out how much to charge. So you need to add all of that stuff up, plus having enough to cover overhead, expenses, etc., to land at that number. You don't want to just say, hey, it's this number. So when you break it down, I mean, that $2,500 a month, are you saying that's way too expensive? I think you'd find that that's probably more in line, or it's not that much at all, right? It just, the answer is it depends, because your licensing and your COGS and stuff are going to be different.
Should we touch the bonus lightning round question?
Yeah.
You already know where this is going. When do you add the extra S?
No, it's when you sign up for a service that says you can do it overnight. That's
so I think we could talk about this for an hour. I think what I would say is, you can add the extra S anytime you want, because there's also no definition really for what is an MSSP. And most definitions you'll hear are something like,
here.
Yeah, right. There's something like you're providing.
Yeah, you're providing MDR, and that's what all you think it takes. And that's the majority. Oh, you can provide 24/7 SOC MDR, and now you're an MSSP. No, there's a hell of a lot more to security than just 24/7 MDR, especially around policies, procedures, compliance, road mapping, risk management, vulnerability management. There's so much more that goes into it. We have a pretty extensive security stack, and we are not an MSSP. We don't even call ourselves an MSP. We continue to say we're a security-led, security-focused technical partner. For that reason, we don't want to be put in that box, because it's just, there's so much business that accompanies it that security is a part of it. And just because you outsource or offer 24/7 MDR does not make you an MSSP. I'm sorry. But again, there's nothing that says you can't call yourself that. So who am I?
There's no definition. I've often used, again, the decision-making component as part of the definition, right? Do you have the ability to decide what's going to happen from a security perspective, or are you just supplementing a capability that either the internal or the MSP doesn't have? Or do you own security from I have the ability to dictate architecture and configuration capability, right? There's a lot of different things in here, and it's a big question. I don't think there's as widely accepted of a definition of MSSP as the one we just came up with for MSP. Let's not even go down that road further. We'll be talking about it for an hour. All that's to say is it's fuzzy, and it's definitely not something you can do instantly.
Yep. Yeah, well, I think the bottom line is there's quite a few places that just say, hey, MSP is just, hey, we're a company that provides IT services. And there's many ways to provide IT services, both good, bad, reactive, proactive. But I think we're kind of in agreement as to what we feel the line is between your break fixed and your managed service. continual continual engagement and proactiveness. But another answer for it depends. Let's see if we can keep our streak going with the next
It's
story we have
consulting.
here.
That's always the answer.
Yep.
I'm trying
All
to think
right.
of a question that wouldn't be it depends.
Well, maybe this is the one. Middle management at an MSP. Is anyone here sitting in a middle management position over technical teams? What made you want to step into this role? What are some of your biggest challenges and greatest rewards? Did you come from a technical or different management position? This person has been given the opportunity to transition in management over an engineering team, and he'd love to learn from those who have done it and potentially build connections. So is this a role that you've ever had?
Yes. So I'm gonna get on my soapbox here. The one thing, yes, there's a lot of nuances to management and all of that, but if I could leave everyone with one piece of advice, it's be really, really sure that that's what you want, right? Because it is a different career. It's a different job. It's not the best. In fact, promoting your best tech to management is like the worst thing you can do because now you just lost your best technical resource unless they decide they really want to go into management. But just be completely sure that you want to go into the field of managing people because it is a lot different than managing servers or workstations or networks, right?
Yep.
They're not, people aren't deterministic. It's not like this input always yields this output. So that's my thing. You will feel different pressures depending on the organization. You might become responsible for numbers and get frustrated when your team doesn't follow through. It's something that's hard to get used to. Being held responsible for the actions and outcomes of others. Depending on the org, you might have a P&L responsibility, just depending on what department you're talking about. You'll have to deal with clients that come in or have issues with something your team did. All of that stuff is fine. It's a skill set you can learn, but it's different, right? And that is, I have seen so many great techs fail at management because they think that's the path to higher pay, to be more involved in the organization, to move up in their career. Maybe it is in your org, and that's a totally separate issue. Do they have, is there a path for technical and management the way like Microsoft has, for example? But just be really sure you want it is my soapbox whenever this topic comes up.
Yeah, sorry if you guys can hear my kids screaming in the background. They're playing a riveting game of Roblox, so apologize. But it's a relevant mystery. Should you have antivirus? It depends. Real quick, let me touch on that. Of course, the
No.
answer is it depends. What if it's an air-gapped machine that's running some sort of machinery? I wouldn't have antivirus on that at all. So yeah, there's options, but yeah, getting back into the middle management, I mean, you really hit it. It's a completely different skill set. And just because you're a good tech or a good engineer doesn't mean you're a good manager. You certainly could be. And then in the same vein as just somebody could be a fantastic manager, but they're not a technical person because it's two entirely different skill sets. And I mean, like you said, you're looking at an emotional thing versus a logical thing. And a lot of management is you're babysitting adults. If you have a good team, hopefully it's less on that. But you're more meetings, more of a delegation role versus a hands-on technical role. And even if you come from a technical role at that point, because you're less and less into the day in and day out of things, you're going to lose some of your technical edge. I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where I kind of get a little bit of the best of both worlds. But I think eventually, especially being in like the more security focused kind of vCISO style role, I'm going to not be as hands-on, right? And even some of the stuff like my clock wasn't syncing, and I spent like 10 minutes Googling it before I was like, dude, we have a help desk that deals with this every day. Like I could just spend 2 seconds asking them and he could fix it. Like I had to admit, like like I needed help, because it's two different things. And what I always said as a leader, one of my first manager roles, I worked at a call center and did tier 1/tier 2 support for an ISP. And then I got moved over to like a prepaid cell phone company account, which actually had quite a bit of technicalities to it, porting numbers and troubleshooting phones and stuff behind the scenes. And I was put in a manager role at the age of like 22 or 23. And some of my team had been on that account for 6, 7, 8 years. And here I am like 1 year into the role, and now I'm a manager. And that definitely caused some friction with especially some of the older folks, because like, we've been doing this longer than you. Why do we have to listen to you? And what I always say is, we're all a team, right? And even though I'm a manager role, like, we're all on the same team. We all have the same goal. It's just our positions are different. And think of it like a football team, right? Your quarterback, running back, lineman, etc. So my role in this is more of the leadership role, and it's to help you guys excel and do everything I can to work with you guys. But at the end of the day, we're all still trying to get that touchdown. It's just our roles to get there are a little different, right? Doesn't mean I'm any better or worse. It's just I have a different roles and different responsibilities than you, and I'm going to do whatever I can as my role to make our team work as smoothly and as best as possible.
Mm-hmm. It's such a good point, and you totally nailed it with the slowly diminishing tech skills portion. So when I took over our projects professional services department, um, in the beginning, it was very tempting for the hardest projects for me to still do. And you know what happened? All the stuff I was supposed to be doing running the department didn't get done until like 9 o'clock at night, because I was like installing a server or something.
Yep.
You got to be okay letting that stuff go. And it go, just like with any other managerial position, you have to get used to the fact that your team at first is not going to do it as well, or the way that you thought the right, any of that stuff. That can be tough for engineering people like myself included to get around, and your tech skills will diminish. Like, not even could, they will. Like, after I made that move, I was not the best tech in the org anymore, and I shouldn't be, right? If I am, I shouldn't be managing.
Yep. I mean, I come from a very strong Microsoft and Azure background. I haven't touched Azure in almost 2 years, and it's actually renewal time for my AZ-104 and my AZ-305, and I'm thankfully that those renewals are open book. But like, there's no way I could take her past those now, because like I've done some things with Azure, but I've lost my technical edge. I mean, I could still find my way around there, but in no way am I as confident as I was 2 years ago, when that was literally my day in and day out job, was managing and securing Azure. I mean, there's been so many changes, I wouldn't even know. But stay tuned and find out if I renew that. I just gotta bite the bullet and get the renewal.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the point stands though. It's different, and it sounds like you're completely fine with that. But it's weird. For me, it's strange too. Still, like, I'm used to being the escalation point of last resort, and I'm certainly not that anymore.
Yeah, I still get that here and there, but it's definitely not as much. I mean, that was my role at the last MSP, is like, if you couldn't figure out something with them like Microsoft, I was the last stop. And now it's like, hey, I'll take a look and I can probably figure this out. But the first person I'm calling is our Microsoft expert on the projects team, and I'll work hand in hand with him and kind of, use our experience and work together. But I'm comfortable. And the other quote I heard is, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. I would much rather be surrounded with people smarter than me. And I'll use my strengths. What I'm good at is communication, as I can take very technical things and make it a relatable or speak to that, right? And I might not need to have the deep technical understanding, but know enough to get those concepts and then communicate them. I would much rather, hey, I understand that, I can put this in layman's terms, but not be the person that's actually doing that deep technical stuff. Hey, you be specialized, and I'm going to rely on you. And
I get it. I don't know about you. I'm the only one in my office at the moment. So am I technically in the wrong room by definition then?
I mean, I have a cat snoozing next to me, so I mean it could be comparable.
Okay. I think we can move on. I think we've beaten this point to death. Okay, focusing on a niche market. Does anyone position their MSP to be tailored to a specific vertical? Okay, yes, is the answer to that question. I guess the question of that is yes, absolutely. The question is, why would you do that? What are the benefits to doing that? I think that's how I would take this.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Josh. One, in the organizations you came from, did you focus on a specific vertical? And whether yes or no, why might an organization want to do that?
So previous to a couple that I've been at, the answer is no, unless I feel that you could niche or target market almost anything, right? There wasn't a specific vertical, but there was definitely a specific target market, and it was the smaller businesses, kind of more of the 50 users or less mom and pop shops with a handful of bigger ones, but more focus on education and kind of the smaller businesses. Not so you're not, not focusing on a vertical, so to speak, but you still have your target market. You still have kind of your specialty and what you're looking for. For this particular one, we're not aligned to a specific vertical, but I would say a couple of verticals, where like biotech and other professional services and a handful of others, but there's specific things we're looking for, like a specific kind of number of employees, operational maturity, things like that to make a good partner. So we still have a target market, versus I do know that there's some MSPs that like, hey, we only do healthcare, or we only do law firms or accounting firms. And those definitely work, because then at that point you can speak to those terms in that industry. Like, you probably know, like, if you're an MSP for dentist offices, God help you, but you probably know Dentrix or Dexis or EagleSoft in and out. You can speak to those. You can align your stack to be those specific things, and there's definitely benefits to that. The drawbacks are, you might have a smaller target market, so smaller client, smaller net of clients that you could potentially go with. But then on the other side is you can land very specific ones and be more efficient, and kind of scale better with that. So our patented answer is it depends. But I think you still have to have, if you're not in a specific vertical, you still have to have a target market, and not just say yes to supporting any business that's out there.
So I agree with everything you said. The most common reason I've seen someone focus on a specific vertical is, yes, and we did this for a while too. We had a big dentist practice for a while, and I unfortunately learned quite a bit about supporting EagleSoft and Dentrix and all that stuff. It was not a pleasant experience.
The only fun thing about that was getting to play with the X-ray machine when you were troubleshooting it. Like, hey, we need to troubleshoot this X-ray machine. Let's throw a stapler in there. What does that look like under an X-ray?
Well, at least it was that, and not like your techs all X-rayed themselves over and over again. Because that would have been way worse. It's one of the only true ways to create uniques, right? We in the industry have this habit of saying false uniques, things like our support is better than anyone else, or we have the best customer service, or things like that. Focusing on a specific vertical is a way to make a true unique, in that We have more dental clients than anyone else, and we have experience solving their problems and knowing how they operate and knowing how they work and things like that than anyone else in the entire area, right? Um, that's a big benefit of focusing because you can get beyond just, hey, my dentist picked Dentrix, and get involved in the decision making process because you're so focused on that industry. And or if you're doing healthcare in general, right? Maybe you know a lot about the EMR systems, or um, a couple years ago, more than a couple years ago at this point, when everyone was moving to electronic medical records, right? You helped a lot of people through that transition. Um, so I think there is value in that. The other thing I've seen is, even if you don't focus on a specific vertical, I've seen some organizations focus on kind of categories of verticals, like professional services, accounting, lawyers, that kind of thing, or like all industry, even if it's not just manufacturing, but just like heavy industrial stuff. Um, so it kind of depends, and it depends on your business goal, in that at some point you just have to bring revenue in, and it's very tough to turn down clients that otherwise want to work with you just because they don't fit your target completely. But as you mature your target client profile or target customer profile, or ideal, whatever acronym you want to use, I think ideal is really the right one. Um, you have to get narrower and narrower and more selective with that.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah,
that
and
could be
there's
vertical, that could be business size, and things like that.
yeah, there's huge benefits on that too. Like you said, if you're heavy machinery, cool. We know how to fix and operate CNC machines, so now you have that true unique, and you can do that. Or if you're on the education sector, maybe you're really well versed in helping navigate E-rate or things like that, right? And that would
Yeah.
be a market separator. But even if there's still a benefit to having a wider net of like you said, getting that revenue, and not just discounting somebody if they don't. So um, the great old answer is it depends. But I think as you grow, even if you're not stuck in a specific vertical, you're going to have a target client profile. So and you should have a client profile that you're most comfortable with, or you try to look for.
I think we should make it ideal client profile just so the acronym is ICP, and we can
There we
make
go.
insane clown posse jokes.
Yes. All right. Well, on that note, I think we gotta sip our Fago and go to the last story here. And that's the extent of my ICP knowledge. I never got into them.
That's all I got too.
All right. Oh, the buzzword. Do you prefer a SPOG, a single pane of glass, or multiple tech stacks for your MSP? Do you want the sweet single pane of glass bundle of software that does exactly what you need it to, or do you want to piece it together?
I've thought about how to answer this, and I think I can get it down to like one sentence, and then you can agree or disagree. In that, single pane of glass or integrated dashboard, or whatever term you want to use, is a nice to have, but not important enough that I would pick the wrong solution for it. I'd certainly prefer that if it's an option, but getting exactly the tooling or stack or whatever that I want to use is more important, even if that means logging into multiple portals.
Yeah, 100% on that. And I'll go further with the advice. Know what you want in a tool before you research those tools, right? You figure out like what you want your entitlements to be, what you want your must-haves and your nice-to-haves, and build out exactly what you're looking for, and then go find
He's not wrong.
the solution that meets it. Don't tailor your business to the solution, because if something goes down, or if you have that single pane of glass, that's your single point of failure as well. Like, yes, it can be easier, but that doesn't mean that it's the right choice. Case in point, we were using a security solution, and it was a single pane of glass. It did a whole lot of things at once. And then as I started diving into it, it was like, hey, the convenience of this isn't worth it not being a good solution. There was a lot of shortcomings with it, things that weren't being done, and issues with that particular vendor. And I had to find 3 solutions to replace the one we were using. But it's so worth it because we have better solutions that fit better. And we have SSO, so it's not like it's terribly hard to have 3 different dashboards. They're all like you click here to go into there. And we have a SIEM product that will gather a lot of the alerts and stuff, and I can try to make a single pane of glass as best as possible, but it's not worth it. Just find out what works for you, and don't settle, just because it's a single pane of glass or all of this, and make it convenient. I mean, that's not worth a shortcoming. If you have a tool out there that does what you want it to do, it's worth that extra dashboard.
Yeah. The one thing that I'll add to my thank you for calling out the run-on sentence, because that was a very long, it was like a paragraph or like a Hemingway length sentence. It can be the scale tipper or the differentiator. If I have 2 products I'm comparing that are really close, then yes, I might favor the one that integrates with some other dashboard or some other interface that I'm using already. But other than that, it's got to be the right solution first, and I will deal with some management pain, especially because the reality is I'm probably going to just make use of the API and automate it in some way anyway. It's got to be the right fit, and if it's easier, if 2 products are the right fit, the one that's easier to manage will win out, but functionality fit is more important.
100%. So yeah, there's your answer. It's astounding. I mean, I think this one is not so much it depends, but the tool is better than the pane of glass.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a good way to put it. That could have been the one sentence.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're coming up here at the top of the hour. Do you got anything exciting coming up that you want to throw out, Matt?
Nothing big coming up. If you're paying attention to all the stuff going on at MMN, pay attention to what's going on with Pitch It. There's quite a bit going on with that, live streams and such about this is starting to wind down with the winner announced at IT Nation Connect. So be around on the lookout for that. And I think Danny's going to put on the screen, there's a QR code for the MMN Discord. Josh and I are both on there regularly, occasionally giving answers, mostly making jokes and wisecracks. Other than that, no, thank you for coming on. Josh, any last thoughts?
Yeah, join the Discord. It's a lot of fun in there. We do have a next peer group coming up Monday at 12 Central, where we just hang out for an hour and talk about whatever people want to talk about. We've literally had it where we just show off our pets, or we've had riveting discussions about various things. Speaking of pets, my dog just came in and said hi. So the other thing on my end, if you follow me on LinkedIn or in any of the Discords, I'm part of a free IR training session called IR Game. We have a live stream coming up next Friday with the Empath crew. So if you're a member of Empath, please check that out. And then we have an open registration for the last week of August, which would be August 30th, or the last Friday, sorry. Please sign up for that. It is a lot of fun. You will learn a lot. You'll get a chance to role play. It is unlike any other IR tabletop you've ever been a part of. And it's one of my favorite things I'm involved with. So check out IR Game.
All right. So with that, thanks everyone for joining and listening in, and we'll see you next week.
This has been a broadcast of the MSP Media Network.